Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar entitled Transforming Best Source of Hire to Best Source of Employees Through People Analytics. My name is Jonathan Webster, and I'm your facilitator for this online event. A couple of quick orders of business. First, just a heads up. During the first portion of the webinar, everyone will be muted so we can get a clean and clear recording to share with you later. Second, during the webinar, if you have any questions, thoughts, anything that you want to communicate with us, please use the chat icon. It looks like an old cartoon speech bubble. And you can send direct messages to me, Jonathan Webster, or to everyone. You can even send them directly to Karen Doyle, the presenter. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to our People Analytics webinar presenter. Her name is Karen Doyle, Karen Stevens Doyle, and she's consulted C-suite executives and human resource professionals on analytics solutions across multiple industries for more than 20 years. We're proud she's on our team here at TrenData, and we're looking forward to having her as our presenter today. With no further ado, I will hand it off to Karen Doyle.
Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate that introduction. Hello, everyone. We appreciate your time today. Our goal today is to make this very informative and have a good takeaway for you, and to show you how you can turn those caterpillars into butterflies and hopefully retain them over the duration of their stay with you. Just a quick agenda. We want to make this webinar valuable to you and not make it too salesy. So I'm going to give you just a little bit of information about TrenData and what we do, but then we'll get into the topics of the recruiting goal of what we see, hiring and retention data that supports that and what we're seeing in the marketplace and others in the marketplace. And then we'll review the full employee lifecycle. How do you keep track of that with technology? And then we'll get into a live demonstration. And as Jonathan indicated, the Q&A session will be at the end. So, as you go along, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat box and we'll address them at the end of the presentation or the webinar. So just something really quickly about TrenData. We are a cloud-based platform company, and we provide organizations the ability to generate advanced and predictive analytics by unifying and trending metrics from multiple HR applications. So whether you have a talent management system, your HRS system, learning, surveys, benchmarking data, endless amount of data out there, we can integrate that out into a single solution, and we'll show you a little bit how that works. Our company launched in 2019, and we have a good customer base. And we're located just outside of Dallas, Texas, just north of Dallas in Richardson, Texas, those familiar with the area. We have a pretty broad range of customers, and you'll see that in this slide. And what I really want to point out is we're not a vertical application. We're an application for HR professionals, key stakeholders, and executives, and it's developed by HR professionals. So Lisa Rowan of IDC said that the typical organization has 22 HR systems, and that's a lot of data. And what all these companies have in common is a struggle to get information out of their systems in a meaningful and coherent way. So we like to start out with a quote. This is very apropos for our webinar this morning. And Winston Churchill once said there are two kinds of successes, initial and ultimate. And that really goes with our recruiting success and our topic this morning. The initial goal is to, of course, get the positions filled, but the ultimate goal and what you're probably doing in recruiting and your HR organization is to gain that long-term employee. And those two things don't always happen in succession. some statistics here, and this goes in line with what we see in the marketplace, is that Talent and Human Resource Magazine says that 33% of new hires don't last 6 months. And that number stays pretty steady year over year. And the average tenure for employees is just a little over 4 years. And the last bullet is quite interesting because this is indicating that vice presidents and above in organizations, almost half are recruited from outside. So the organizations are not typically growing the executives internally, they're finding them externally. And so how does that reflect on recruiting and development in the organization? We see that this graphic, that the time to fill has rather spiked up. We couldn't find any more current graphics than this, but this is pretty in line with what we see in the marketplace, that the time to fill is jumping up and not reducing. And that is just a result of the really tight labor market and finding good qualified people. In February alone in 2019, the Bureau of Labor Statistics said that already 2.86 million people had already quit their jobs. So you would think that there would be a shorter time to fill. However, it's pretty hard to find those candidates. So let's take a little deeper dive into that and see if we can see where the averages are across. What this graph is showing, this is a graph by another software company, Workable, and they did a survey by geography, and not only by geography, but by industry as well. And some of these you'll find where they're really highly skilled, like engineering. Time to fill is rather high, even across multiple locations. Healthcare, we find that it's a little lower because of people and the demand of, say, nurses and the inability to fill that hospital bed unless you have the appropriate staffing. So there's wanting to fill that, and getting that filled rather quickly. But overall, the average is, does work out to be about 41 days across the industry and location. And if you take a look at this, the median years of tenure, this is something that the Bureau of Labor Statistics does about every 2 years. The median tenure just kind of trickled down a little bit, but what you'll see is, like in hospitality, where you probably have a younger generation, more demanding jobs that people don't stay in for long periods of time, versus like manufacturing, where you might see higher tenure. So it does vary across industries and different vertical markets. This is an example of the generational differences. And not surprising, there are quite a big difference between the baby boomers and the millennials. And what you see is the younger the age, the shorter duration of employment. And what you want to really pay attention to is really that middle area, the blue and the purple, where you really see the Generation Z. They don't really tend to stay longer than really 4 years, and that's the upcoming generation that we really want to pay attention to. So the graph on the right really is just a summary of what we're seeing with the graph on the left. So let's take a look at the employee life cycle. So what are you trying to do to recruit the right people? And if you look at the entire life cycle of a new hire, the first thing you do is, and it's really a constant thing for most people on this webinar, is you take a look at your new hire pool. And if Talent Magazine is correct, a third of those are gone in the 6 months. So your pool becomes much, much smaller. And then as you get onto the performance years and your reviews, the employees separate themselves out. So you've got the high performers, the middle performers, and the low performers. And as I mentioned, this is really done through your performance reviews. And then a small section of that is really where your main talent comes from, and from those people who may be promoted. And what you really want to take a look at is, where did you get them? What environment did they work to be more productive? And how much did you pay them in terms of compensation, training investments that the company has made, and your overall benefits as well? So if we look backwards and looking at the ideal candidate, where are they and how do I get more of them? And you drill down to the middle and early years, and that's where you really have the bulk of your data. You'll have performance reviews, your compensation of what you paid them, and then there's softer data like environment. Did they work remotely, or were they micromanaged, or did they work well on their own? Or what kind of management style do they really respond to? And then finally, with the middle, early and mid contributors, are really their expectations. Are they planning on doing their job for 10 years, or are they knocking it out of the park and hopefully be promoted to management? So there's a lot of data that is available to us with those mid contributors. Then you go to the first year employees, and this is really what we call the observation years. And there's really less data available here. You can view their traits and skills by how they're working with their peers, and looking at how intelligently ambitious they are through assessment, testing, or observation. And are they tackling their problems on their own, or do they need constant coaching or even pushed? So the ability to look at this and the job, location, and department, and segregate all this out is really important, because someone that's motivated in engineering might be motivated differently than in sales. You might also want to take a look at it by job function. You know, is there differences between the job function and department? And even location, is there areas like in New York is having a better turnout with keeping retention than, say, Boise, Idaho? And then finally, you want to take a look at the new hires. Where are they sourced? There are a lot of ways to view the data, but you want to be able to find those ideal candidates and pull them into your organization. So our initial technology success takes a look at what we call really a flat system, where you have a single solution, such as recruiting, and you're taking a look at that solution with no other data sources. And you might come up with a scenario where job boards is really where you're getting your best people, followed by LinkedIn and job fairs. But if you are taking a look at a holistic system where you're integrating data, you might get some different answers. But most people rely on the graph on the right, our old Excel spreadsheet that is our favorite tool to use. And most people are trying to dump data into their Excel spreadsheet to come up with some answers. But doing that is very, very laborious, often very difficult to take a look at trends and analysis. And so that's why a unifying holistic solution can make it a lot easier than relying on old faithful Excel. So let's take a look at what people analytics are, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with what people analytics is, but we want you to look at it through our lenses and how we view this. And so there's a couple of different ways that we start with metrics, but it's really a compilation of data, such as turnover, where the hire comes from, so the source of hire, what kind of performers are they, and then the ability to bring in benchmark data so that you can see salary versus what the industry standard is, so you don't under or overpay. And all of this is just a snapshot in time. So you're looking at it today only. With technology, you're able to become, those metrics are able to become analytics if you trend them. And they give you context by, which gives you the predictive mode, so that you can look at if turnover is down, you can figure out why, and give a forecast and be able to drill down and visualize these trends. And visualizing these down into subgroups is really, really important, because you want to be able to see where your high performers are year over year, and it gives context to what you're seeing. So the things that you want to see and drill down to, where you can determine where you might have a problem area, and being able to visualize this makes it a lot easier than just looking at a spreadsheet. And the ability to drill down, as I mentioned before, for the entire company, so that you can have different metrics by department, by location, by gender, by ethnicity, et cetera, so that you can determine that if one department is having a problem versus another, you can pinpoint that and try and get a resolution. You want to also be able to model scenarios, and this gives you the ability to have a prescriptive to that problem. So with that, let me exit out of this and get to my demo site. Just give me a moment to switch applications. And hold on a second. We got a new UI for GoToMeeting, and it is not as easy as the other UI. So bear with me just a moment. And I apologize for the delay here. Give me a moment here. And you should see my screen. Okay. So what I first want to show you is how we get the data inside of TrenData. And I'm going to show you the data sources. So what we have here are some of the common interfaces that we have. And you'll see this is not exclusive. We have many others, but these are the most common ones that we see in the marketplace. So we're on the ADP marketplace, we're on the Deltek marketplace, so we can interface directly through the API on these. We also have what we call the TUF file, so it's the TrenData universal file format, and really all you simply do is you have an Excel program that outlines these certain areas, and so the red is the mandatory fields, and then the black are the optional fields. But you can have up to 22 different custom fields on here, so there's a lot of data that you can use in here. And by simply uploading the file, you can get live in really one day. So you can, very easily and quickly get actionable data and actionable results from using this. So let me go and just kind of give you the lay of the land here. I've got my system set up where I have an alert And I also have different views based on the role of the individual. So just to stay in line with the topic of today's webinar, I want to go into my recruiting dashboard. And I have a lot of information that is available to me here. What my cost is per hire, how many days it has in the time to fill, and how many hires I actually had this year. But for this topic, what I want to do is go into my source of hire. So I want to be able to take a look at this. And from a flat view, it looks like really job boards is really where I get my most of my candidates. And I can view this in a number of different ways. I can take a look at it by calendar year. I can look at it by percentage or values or even terms of dollars. But it really does look like, except for in 2018, LinkedIn kind of peaked up in here. But what I want to be able to do is, where do I get my high performers? What's the most successful way I can recruit those? And if I look at my different filter options, I can filter out where my high performers are coming from. So let's just select the 4s and 5s, not new hires or the early years, and apply that. And I'm getting a very different result. It's showing me that LinkedIn is really where I get my best performers. So this is probably something that I want to take a look into and maybe have a bigger investment in LinkedIn versus just having job boards being my leading recruiting area. So that is one scenario I want to talk about. So that's where to find them. Let's take a look at how to keep our employees. And if we look at this tile right here, where we're looking at turnover, my turnover this month was a little over 5%. So if we take a look at this and see how it trends, it's going up, and which is kind of alarming. And we want to take a look at different ways that we can bring this down. But one thing that might have an impact is we have an events overlay. And that allows us to see, was there something that happened during the, some period of time that caused that increase in turnover? And what we see is that we have a acquisition that occurred in June. And that can account for a lot of different things, such as merging jobs or elimination of jobs. The location of where an employee might report to might have changed. So maybe they were reporting to corporate that was just 5 miles away, and now they have to report to a branch that's 30 miles away. Could be management style, lots of different reasons why people change jobs during an acquisition. So that could be an aha moment for me, but it really doesn't help me in trying to prevent this. So what I really want to do is take a look out into the future and see what's going to transpire going forward. So if I don't do anything, the graded area is telling me what the future is going to look like. And it looks like my turnover is going to pull down about a couple of tenths of a percent from February to July, but it's still at a very high level, particularly when I look at year over year. So there's a couple of things that I can do. If I go to the summary tab and I take a look and then start modeling, it pops up 3 different variables. And I have a little panel that comes up on the side that also gives me some guidelines. So it's saying that if I give everybody a salary raise, it's not going to have very much of an impact. But if I bump up work from home policy, that will have an equal effect on populations. But if I improve on professional development, it's going to have a really big one. So what I want to do is take a look at maybe taking a look at increasing salary. So this would be a very expensive move because I have about 1,000 employees in my system. And what I'm going to be able to do is give them a $5,000 raise, which is quite a bit, but let's see what kind of impact that has. And it brings it down just a little bit, but not to the degree of a $5 million investment. So what's the next area that I can take a look at? And we're going to bump that out. And the other thing that I want you to watch is these numbers right here as I move down. So you can also watch the tiles come down, but this changes too, and you've got a lot of information below the grades that I'll go over in just a few minutes. So the second area that I can impact is remote employees. And if I have a flexible policy in which I don't impact productivity and I can make that more flexible for employees, particularly millennials really like that flexibility a lot, and bump that up to say 45%. It had some impact, but let's separate it out between my high performers and my low performers. And it had a pretty significant impact on my my low performers, but not so much on my high performers. So the third area that I can impact, and let's bump that out, is my professional development. And I only have just a little over 6% of my high performers in professional development. So this is where I can take some of that money that I saved from the increase in salary and apply it to more people in professional development. So let's bump that up, just say a little over double. And you can see it has quite a dramatic impact on the high performers and bringing that down. So this is just an excellent way to solve a problem and to visualize and be able to see where the highest impact is and where your investments are in your people. So let's take a look and ask the system. We also have the capability, and let me erase that circle. We also have the capability of using natural language. So simply you can type in a statement and the system will come up with an answer. So let's figure out why salary didn't have an impact. So let's see, why not give bigger raises? Remember the last time that I actually asked that. And what it's pulling up is that benchmark data that's coming in from, this is coming in from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And what I can see is that I'm at or above, in most cases, what the industry standard is. And that's why salary increase didn't really have much of an impact. And frankly, nowadays, salary isn't really the driving force between people coming to a job or leaving a job. And this really validates that. I also just want to show you the basics of where all this data is coming from. And we have 22 metrics that are in this library. And as I mentioned, this application was built for professionals by HR professionals. So this was a result of us going out and interviewing over 4,000 key stakeholders in HR executives, and just HR professionals. And these were the metrics that they said that were the most important to them. So all of these dashboards that were built in the system are derivative from this. So the way you take a look at everything is just by slicing and dicing it. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to my presentation, and give me a moment here. Now we got a blank screen there, but let's go back to my PowerPoint. And again, I apologize for, there we go. So we're moving on to the next section of our webinar today, and that's the Q&A section. So Jonathan, were there any questions that came in during the webinar?
Yes, thank you for that, for the webinar so far, and we do have some questions. The first one is, how is that event overlay data entered?
That is actually, let me see if I can easily, that's a very good question. Let me see if I can easily switch back over to my demo site, and I will actually show you. So bear with me 1 minute.
Sure, and while you're doing that, I'll just let you know ahead of time, you should stay on the demo site because we have a few more questions related to the people analytics.
Okay, that sounds great.
Sure.
Okay, so that's a very good question, and the way that you do that is you have a little event manager that you pull up, and you simply add the event. And so it's based on the organization, the recruitment, the marketing, and social. So that is an automatic, that is not an automatic feed. That is something that you enter in manually.
Perfect. Okay, so the next question, Karen, is could you share some information about the data science team? And what help, if any, do you provide with respect to data that we should be capturing in order to make the most of the TrenData service?
That is a very, very large topic about the data science around that. That is actually our secret sauce. And we use a methodology called random forest. And if you'd like, I can give you more context in that offline, and we can take a very much deeper dive into that than we're able to do this on the webinar today. So thank you for that question, and we'll be happy to follow up with you.
Yeah, but just one short addendum to that answer to the person that asked is yes, we do in fact offer some guidance for what you might be missing in your data capturing, and we would provide some ideas as to maybe what you should be capturing. So
right.
I'll move on to the next question.
Yeah, let me just add on to that too. Is typically what people are wanting to capture are really in these metrics. So it's recruiting information. Where did they come from? Cost of hire, time to fill. What does the talent of the organization look like? You know, performance scores are very, very important. So if you're not capturing performance scores, that is something that probably would really help you in retaining your employees. So the metric library is really full of these different areas for you to be able to follow and guide to capture what data is relevant and how to impact things like turnover, for example.
Right. Thank you. Okay, so let's see. The next question is the Bureau of Labor Statistics data the only salary data that you integrate, or do you provide options for salary data sources?
Yes, the answer is these are just the freebies. So we always like to go to the freebies first. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics is a free service. Salary.com is a free service. But some paid services that offer more extensive breakdowns by industry and job function are Robert Half, and Mercer are just the two that come to mind. But we haven't seen a external system that we have not been able to integrate to. So it's just a matter of getting the API and bringing that in.
Perfect.
And I also want to point out too, SurveyMonkey, because surveys are often a really great source of information. And so if you're using something like SurveyMonkey or another survey system, we can connect that as well.
That's right. Okay, so another question here is, do you have HRBPs, HR business partners building in this tool, or is this targeted for analysts for consumption by HR leaders?
So the idea behind the software is to make you independent from us. And so with the ease of use and everything being just two clicks away, you really don't need a data analyst to create these dashboards or different views. If you need a different metric created, that's something that we do. But the design of this is to make you independent from us so that you're able to navigate and be able to use the system without any special talents. So the answer to your question, long-winded answer, is you don't really need it would be nice to have, but you don't really need to have a special data analyst and their skill set to use the system. We find that just HR professionals, VPs, directors, line managers, people at all different kinds of levels are using this system. Do you have anything to add on to that, Jonathan?
Well, actually, I was just chatting with Dave Ulrich recently on LinkedIn, and I think he might suggest that the HRBP is more of a mindset in some sense, and that he might also sign on to the belief that our system kind of works from that belief, that from a business partner perspective, TrenData is really about bringing HR to the table to have some of these more high level discussions, instead of just HRBP being a role set apart from the rest of HR. What we're trying to do as kind of not just higher level thinking and an idea, but in practical application, is to bring the department together as a whole and to the table to make some data-driven decisions. So I think our system really does speak to a lot of the things that HRBPs think about and work on a day-to-day basis. We have a few more questions here, so I'm just going to press forward. Another one is, can we narrow the event to a subset of our population?
The answer is yes. I had to give that just a thought. That would be available in our enterprise application, where you can segregate the data based on role. So a line manager will only see that information that is relevant to his or her people. So the line manager may have an event that they want to enter that would not be available or viewing in, say recruiting, for example, or another line manager. So the answer to that question is yes.
Great. Okay, so someone asks if you can export the data.
You can share the data, and you can, so the question, I guess the question is, can you export it like into Excel or?
Yeah, like the images we have that are available to export and things like that, sure.
Yeah, so you can share a dashboard simply by, hitting this little share button. You can email the dashboard. You can even, in this, where you can export. So every single view has the employees underneath it that are relevant to this view. And so not only can I export it to a CSV file, I can actually compare. So if I want to compare, say, 3 nurses side by side, I can compare those and take a look at the, salary differences. Like Chloe here is making almost more than double than what Cindy is. So you may want to, analyze that, and then you can export that to a file, or you can export all of this data to a CSV file and being able to analyze it that way. So it's exporting by the tile. So every tile has that capability where you can, compare the employees. If you need more information that you want to export, you simply click in, even like commute distance, for example, any one of these, so you can populate it as much or as little as you want, and then export that data into a CSV file.
Fantastic. Okay, so the last question, but if there are any more, certainly I'd be happy to take them. The last question I have here, Karen, is about data validation. And he asks, is there a way to see the data at rest under this tool, or would questions about accuracy be answered at the source before it's displayed here?
So one way, and I probably need to get my technical team to dive down onto this a little deeper, but one way that people do use our tool is with the TUF file. So you can get a data dump from all your systems using the TUF file. And let me just, let me show you, let me get to the sample. That's what I wanted. So this is a sample of a TUF file. And so you can take all your data, get a data dump in here, and then when you upload it into the system, people often use TrenData to validate their data in the system, because once you upload it, it will give you any kinds of error messages where there's some discrepancy. So it's a great way to clean up your data and take a look at it before it gets into the system. Jonathan, do you have anything else you want to add to that?
I mean, that's very clear. Maybe just one more thing would be that certainly we assist in cleaning and accuracy of the data, and you can always use this as a source of at-rest data if you'd like, or if you just want to dive into the system and watch the data in motion, that's obviously available too.
Great. Was that the last question, or do we have any others coming in?
No others seem to be appearing. So with that, I'll pass it back to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for your time. And those were just great questions. If you need something a little deeper or need some additional information, we're happy to provide that to you. And thank you so much for your time this morning and out of your day and spending it with TrenData. And we hope that you got something useful out of it. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.